Alright, here's the same story, rewritten with deeper emotions, inner thoughts, natural pauses, and lived in humanity, so it feels like a real man, a real town, real consequences. Long, flowing paragraphs, no numbering, no AI tone.
Makes you think.
The dust in Red Willow never truly settled. It floated in the air like an old memory, clinging to boots, porch rails, and the lungs of anyone who stayed too long. That evening, as the sun bled orange behind the hills, the dust seemed heavier, almost watching. People stood outside their homes, not talking much, not moving much either. Something had shifted, and everyone felt it, even if they didn't yet have the words for it. Caleb Holt was standing at the edge of his land when the last light faded. He'd stood there many evenings before, usually counting cattle or thinking about fence repairs, but tonight his chest felt tight. He knew what the town was saying. He'd known the moment he gave the order that there would be no quiet ending to this. Caleb had grown up in Red Willow. He'd scraped his knees on the same dirt roads, learned to ride under the same burning sun. After his father died, the ranch didn't just fall into his hands, it fell onto his shoulders. Bills stacked up fast, grass grew thin, the river, once generous, had started to betray them all. For a long time, Caleb tried to please everyone. He shared water. He followed traditions that made no sense anymore. He told himself that if he just worked harder, slept less, sacrificed more, it would balance out. It never did. Cattle don't live on good intentions, and neither do people. When the drought tightened its grip, Caleb stopped pretending. At the town meeting, he sat there listening to voices rise, hearing his name twisted into something sharp and ugly. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low, tired but steady. If you want to survive, he said, you do what needs doing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten, but the room went cold. They heard defiance. They heard betrayal. What Caleb meant was desperation. The next day, the work began. Fences went up. Channels were dug. The river's path changed just enough to make a difference. Caleb's men didn't talk much while they worked. They trusted him, but they also knew what a town could do when it felt wronged. By sunset, the water no longer flowed the way it always had. By nightfall, Red Willow was on fire with anger. People poured into the streets, calling his name like it was something rotten in their mouths. Someone rang the church bell, not for prayer, but as a warning. When they marched toward Holt Ranch, the sound of boots on dirt felt louder than gunfire ever could. Caleb heard them coming. He didn't reach for his rifle. He stood on his porch, shoulders squared, heart pounding harder than he'd ever admit. When the crowd stopped in front of him, he saw fear behind the anger. Fear of empty fields. Fear of hungry children. Fear of losing control. You had no right, the mayor shouted, face red, hands shaking. Caleb swallowed. It's my land, he said. And I won't watch it die. Someone cursed him. Someone else stepped forward like they wanted to hit him just to feel powerful again. Spit hit the dirt near his boots, and for a moment, Caleb wondered if this was how it ended, with fists and regret. Then Clara Whitmore spoke. She didn't yell. She never had to. Her voice carried because it came from a place people trusted. She looked at the crowd, then at Caleb, and for just a second, their eyes met. He saw worry there, not judgment. You're all angry, she said. But none of you asked why. The shouting slowed, not stopped, just paused. Caleb finally told them everything. About the debts he hid. The nights he stayed awake listening to cattle cough in dry fields. The men he paid before. Himself. The horse he sold quietly so no one would know how bad things had gotten. If this ranch falls, he said, voice cracking despite himself, half of you lose work. The rest lose the only place still buying your feed. No one cheered. No one apologized. But the rage didn't burn as bright. The weeks that followed were hard. People struggled. Some refused to look at Caleb at all. Others cursed his name under their breath while benefiting from the stability his choice created. He adjusted the water when he could, never more than necessary. He carried the weight alone, because that was the price. Then the rains came, not the kind you hope for. The kind that destroy. Fields flooded, roads washed out, but the diverted river absorbed the worst of it. Holt Ranch took the hits, so the valley didn't drown. No one rang bells that time. Life didn't suddenly become friendly. Caleb was still the man who'd angered a town. But evenings grew quieter again. People sat on porches. Kids played in the road. Survival has a way of softening pride. Sometimes, Clara came by the ranch at dusk. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Watching the sun sink behind land that still lived was enough. You knew they'd hate you, she said once. Caleb nodded. His hands were rough, his back always aching, but the ranch stood. "If you want something to last," he said quietly, "you do it, even when everyone turns their back." Red Willow never forgot that. Not because it was pretty, but because it was true. "Got it. I'll go deeper, slower, more emotional, adding layers, memories, silence, regret, and quiet strength. This isn't a new story, it breathes more life into the same one." Nights became the hardest after that. Caleb would lie awake listening to the wind scrape against the walls of the ranch house, the same walls his father had built with his own hands. Every creak sounded like a question he couldn't answer. He replayed faces from the crowd in his mind, men he'd shared meals with, women who used to smile when he rode past. Now their expressions were sharp, wounded, accusing. Being alone didn't scare him. Being misunderstood did. Some mornings, he woke before dawn and walked out to the fields just to remind himself why he'd done it. The cattle moved slowly now, ribs no longer showing the way they had weeks ago. The soil near the diverted water was darker, alive again. He crouched down once, running dirt through his fingers like it might speak back to him. It didn't. It never did. Responsibility rarely thanked you. In town, whispers followed his name like shadows. Children were pulled indoors when he passed. The general store fell quiet when he stepped inside. Once, an old friend turned away rather than nod. That hurt more than the shouting ever had. Anger was loud, but disappointment sat deeper. Caleb never defended himself unless asked. He believed explanations meant nothing until results did. Still, there were moments, small, human moments, when doubt crept in. When he wondered if he could have shared more water, waited longer, suffered a little extra so others wouldn't have to. Those thoughts usually came at night, when the world was quiet enough to hear them. Clara noticed the change before anyone else. She saw it in the way Caleb stood a little stiffer, as if bracing against something invisible. She brought books to the ranch sometimes, claiming they were extras from the schoolhouse. Once, she left a basket of bread on the porch without knocking. He didn't say thank you, but the basket was empty by morning. "You don't have to carry it all alone," she said one evening as they watched the sky darken. Caleb gave a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Someone has to. That was the thing about him. He didn't see himself as brave. He saw himself as necessary. When the first real rain hit, it came in sheets so thick the land disappeared behind it. Thunder cracked like the earth itself was breaking. Caleb rode through it anyway, checking fences, guiding water, making sure nothing gave way. Mud soaked his boots. Rain stung his eyes. But he kept going, driven by the same stubborn resolve that had angered a town. By morning, damage was everywhere, except where it mattered most. Fields downstream were bruised but standing. Homes were damp but intact. People stepped outside, staring in disbelief at what could have been. And slowly, quietly, understanding began to take root. No one came to apologize outright. Pride doesn't vanish overnight, but a man showed up one afternoon asking for work. Another nodded instead of turning away. Someone left fresh eggs by Caleb's gate. Gratitude, in Red Willow, was rarely spoken aloud. At the next town meeting, Caleb sat in the back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The river flowed differently now, not just through land, but through minds. People talked about planning instead of tradition. About survival instead of comfort. Caleb listened, tired but steady. He never became a hero. That was never in the cards. He became something quieter, heavier. A reminder that leadership doesn't always look kind, and sacrifice doesn't always look noble from the outside. Years later, when the drought was spoken of like an old scar, parents told their children about the rancher who made an impossible choice. They didn't dress it up. They didn't pretend it was easy. They said he stood alone when standing alone was the cost of keeping everyone standing at all. And sometimes, at dusk, if you passed Holt Ranch, you could see a man on the porch, watching land that still breathed, still endured. Not smiling, not regretting, just present, because some choices don't bring peace. They bring survival, and for Caleb Holt, that had always been enough.